G'day guys, this is Rob from Troutlore.com.au, Australia's fly tying specialist store. Today we're tying this little black stonefly nymph. It's modelled on the Gripop Stonefly that we find in the freestone streams around the Lake Eildon area here in Victoria. One that definitely needs to be in your fly box coming into summer as the stoneflies start to hatch, but one that could be fished in those streams all season round. So let's get started. We are coming in with a Goulburn Steel 3223 Grub hook, this one in a size 12, and then we're using a couple of sizes of black nickel tungsten beads. Size them accordingly to the hook. With this hook being a size 12, we're using a 1/8 bead there with a 7/64 behind it. Just put a smaller one behind to create the taper and it will work the way you want. So we're coming in with some 8/0 Vivus thread in black. I'm using one of these new ceramic insert spigot bobbins from Vineyard that we just added to the shop this week. I thought I could liberate a few and have them for myself, because why not? So coming in just behind the eye, we're going to start the thread off, trim out that tag end, just put a little bit of a bulk head there, then slide this first bead down. This is just to allow a little bit of space to be kept between the bead and the eye of the hook. You'll understand why as we get further on into the process. Now I'm just going to build up some bulk behind this first bead and come in with a little bit of dubbing just a nice fine noodle in there to help with that bulk, just to act as a spacer. Then we'll slide our second bead up, push him in, and there we go. Once that's in place, we're going to add some black Vineyard coloured copper wire for the ribbing. We'll just pop that in at the rear of that hook and then start bringing it down the bend of the hook to about that point, and then we'll start wrapping back up. We want to build a taper here, so we're going to wrap down about 90% of the way down, then wrap all the way up, then wrap about 80% of the way down, then all the way back up again. Then we're going to wrap 70% of the way down, then all the way back up. And we're going to go 50% of the way down and back up. As you can see, just working down and back up each time so that we're putting more towards the beads and just creating that gentle taper. Then for the tail, we're coming in with some Vineyard goose biots in black. And just strip 2 of those away, and then we want to see how they have that gentle curve on them. We want that curve pointing up. The important thing here is that the tips are aligned. So we bring our thread back down to where that wire starts and then capture those 2 biots. Try that again. Capture those 2 biots on top with a couple of loose wraps, and we turn the vise around so we can work from the top down. We just need to separate them into that V shape. Once we get that in place, one wrap around the bare shank, then 1, 2 around the biots, lock them in place, one more around the shank, and then we just come back in and check with our eyes. We can't quite see it on the vise there, maybe you can, maybe you can't. I can see it in the glare, but they're spaced out nicely. So then we'll just fold those biots down and capture them a little further up, and then a little further up again. Peel those tag ends up and trim them out. Lock everything down, and then we'll just run our thread completely down over that to where the tying point is, and then run our thread back up again just to smooth out that surface before we wrap the wire onto it. Makes the wire a lot easier to work with if we have a smooth surface. I apologise for the squeaky bobbin, it's brand new and we haven't yet worn in those little brass knuckles on them, but it'll settle down, don't you worry about that. So bobbin is coming down to the end behind the wire we are passing underneath and wrapping over, and we're keeping that thread there so that it's going to force each wrap to rest up against the previous wrap and help with a tighter, more even wire, which is important when using this finer stuff, especially when we're doing all black and we can't see what we're doing until later on when we zoom in with the photos and realize that there's all these gaps. That thread's going to help force each wrap to sit closer to each other. It's always a bit difficult at the start here when you're working around the hook point. We'll be clear of that soon. And getting our way up the body. There we go, working our way up. 2/3 of the way there now. Past that hook point. Gets a lot easier from here on out. And a few more wraps just to bring it in behind that first bead. There we go. And now we'll wrap our thread around the wire and around the wire again, once around the shank, and that'll allow us to helicopter that wire off nice and clean. Now for the wing case of this fly, we are using Upavon Scudback in the black. We're going to come in just the rear of that first bead and capture that little piece of Scudback in there, then rotate to view the top to make sure that it's aligned centrally, which it is, and then bind down a little bit of weight on the thread there. In comes some dubbing wax, and now we're using Chuck and Duck hare and squirrel dubbing in the black. We will start to build a very fine noodle. We're going to do 2 layers of noodles here. We're going to do a fine one to allow us to fill in the gaps, and then follow it up with a looser wrap noodle that's going to allow us plenty of material to tease out for the legs later on. Once we've done that, we bring our thread forward of that first bead, and then we're going to capture the scud back, just checking that we've got it centered. Bind that down, and then back in with another fine dubbing needle, wrapped nice and tight, just to fill in the gap there. Get that nice and tight. And we'll fold this back, capture the scud back, a few good firm wraps, and then we're going to put another loose layer of dubbing in there. As you can see, quite a coarse noodle, allowing us material that we can brush out. Then just going to put a little bit more dubbing in the rear of that bead, just to fill the gap there. That's better. And then bring our thread forward of the bead and capture it around the hook eye. As you can see now, that's why we put that little bit of thread at the start, to keep the bead sitting back slightly. So we're going to fold that scud back over the front bead and capture it with a couple of loose wraps, and then pull it back and put in a couple of wraps between the scud back and the bead itself. Then we're going to bring our thread back and lock it in behind the bead before the final application of dubbing in there. Again, another somewhat loose coating through that gap. And then we'll fold that scud back over everything and capture it with a couple of tight wraps. And then in comes the whip finisher to lock that off. More. There we go. Snip that clean and trim off the edge. Now that we've got that there, just going to preen down that dubbing to clear it from the top. And out comes our UV resin. A couple of little drops on the top there, and then smooth that across the top of the wing case, and before hitting it with the light, we turn that upside down just to let it all settle in place. In comes our torch, and we'll seal that up. Only takes a few seconds with this stuff. Once that's done, we're going to fire from the top down as well, just to make sure, give it that second curing. Hardens everything right up. Then check that, yep, that's fine. And then going to come in with our dubbing brush, just tease out that dubbing. That's why we put those extra loose wraps in there, so we can tease out a lot of this hair and save us having to put in legs at the front of the fly, because the hair fibers from that dubbing take care of that nicely for us and create a nice leggy silhouette. Unfortunately, you always tend to hook yourself on that point of these hooks. Now, nice and sharp, which is what we want, but not ideal for when tying. So there you have it, my take on the Gripop, the little black stonefly nymph that we find in those freestone streams in the areas around Eildon in Victoria. It's a fantastic fly to fish late spring into summer when the stoneflies are hatching, but one that you can fish all year round because they're in the water and fish are feeding on them. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you're always aware of new videos. There's new content coming out every week as promised. If you're interested in tying this, all the materials are available from the Troutlore fly tying store as always. And once again, thank you for watching and happy tying.